It lasted 3 hours. 3 hours where Shohei Ohtani's bat sat in a sealed evidence bag. 3 hours where his gloves were tagged, labeled, and carried away by officials. 3 hours where his uniform, the one he had worn through 7 innings of baseball, was no longer his to wear. 3 hours where the best player on the planet stood inside a stadium corridor, waiting for baseball to decide what to do with him. Craig Stanton said it after the game. He didn't say it with a smile. He didn't say it with relief. He said it the way a man says something when he still cannot fully believe what he just witnessed. I've been in this game for 22 years. I've never seen anything like that. Neither had anyone else. This was not a random Tuesday in April. This was not a game that could be filed away and forgotten before the weekend. The Dodgers were carrying the weight of a division lead that felt more fragile than the standing suggested. Every game in this stretch carried a different kind of pressure. The kind that doesn't show up in the box score but lives in the dugout, in the bullpen, in the quiet moments between pitches when a manager stares at the field and calculates everything that could go wrong. And in the 7th inning, on a night when Shohei Ohtani had already done what Shohei Ohtani does, something happened that nobody had prepared for. He hit a double. Then the umpires surrounded him. The pitch came in at 148.3 kilometers per hour. A two-seam fastball, running inside. Most hitters step back. Most hitters foul it off. Most hitters take their base and move on. Ohtani didn't move on. The crack of the bat was different. The kind of sound that makes the outfielders turn before the ball even leaves the infield. The ball found the left center gap at 182.6 kilometers per hour. It hit the warning track dirt 114.7 meters from home plate. Ohtani was already rounding first before the outfielder reached the ball. He slid into second base. Safe. For approximately 4 seconds, it was just a double. Then the opposing pitcher walked toward the mound. Not toward the dugout. Not toward the batter's box. He walked toward the home plate umpire with something in his hand. He was pointing at Ohtani's bat. The umpire looked at him. Then looked at the bat. Then looked at the other umpires. What happened next took less than 90 seconds to begin and 3 hours to resolve. The opposing pitcher's name doesn't matter as much as what he said. He told the umpire he heard something unusual. Not just the sound of a bat making contact. Something else inside that sound. Something that didn't belong. Under MLB Rule 3.02, no player shall intentionally discolor or damage any ball by rubbing it with soil, rosin, paraffin, licorice, sandpaper, emery paper or other foreign substance. The same principle extends to the bat itself. Pine tar above the 18-inch limit. Foreign substances on the barrel. Anything that could alter the flight of the ball in a way the rules do not allow. The umpires had to act. They called time. They walked to second base. And they surrounded Shohei Ohtani. He didn't argue. That was the first thing people noticed when the broadcast cameras found him. He stood at second base with his hands slightly raised, not in protest, but in the way a man stands when he is utterly calm in a situation that is anything but. The umpire reached for the bat. Ohtani handed it over. Then they asked for his batting gloves. He removed them. One at a time. Slowly. Without expression. Then came the request that made the stadium go silent. His uniform. Not the entire uniform. The jersey. Specifically the forearm area of the left sleeve, which the opposing pitcher had claimed showed a substance that shouldn't be there. Ohtani walked off the field under the watching eyes of 45,000 people. The Dodgers' dugout stood still. Nobody was pacing. Nobody was shouting. They stood the way people stand when they don't yet know what they're watching. Rob Manfred was notified within minutes. The investigation began immediately. The game continued without him. That was the strange part. The world kept moving. Other players batted. Other pitchers threw. The scoreboard kept updating. But in the corridor beneath Dodger Stadium, a sealed bag sat on a table. Ohtani's bat. His gloves. A section of his jersey, cut at the seam and placed in a separate container. 3 officials examined the equipment. 1 from the umpiring staff. 1 from MLB's on-site compliance team. 1 independent analyst brought in via phone consultation before the game had even reached the 8th inning. They tested the barrel of the bat for foreign substances under UV light. They ran a friction analysis on the batting gloves. They examined the fabric of the jersey sleeve under magnification. The results took time. Ohtani waited. He didn't pace the corridor according to the people who saw him. He sat. He drank water. At one point he spoke briefly to the Dodgers interpreter. Brief words. No visible agitation. The face of a man who knew something the rest of the world was still trying to figure out. Outside, the broadcast was in chaos. The television analysts didn't have answers. They had opinions. And opinions, on a night like this, came fast and loud. One former player said it straight. If there's anything on that bat, this changes everything about this season. Another said the opposite with equal certainty. I've faced Ohtani. I've watched him for years. This doesn't feel right to me. The split screen showed the empty second base bag. The dirt where his cleats had marked the ground. The game was still happening. But nobody in the broadcast booth was talking about the game. They were all talking about the 3 hours. He issued the statement before the game ended. That was the detail that surprised people most. Not the content of the statement. The timing. Manfred's office doesn't typically respond mid-game. Statements come the next morning. Press conferences are scheduled. Processes are followed. This time, the statement arrived while the 9th inning was still being played. It was short. 4 sentences. MLB is aware of the situation involving Shohei Ohtani's equipment in tonight's game. The matter is under formal review by the Commissioner's office. All relevant equipment has been secured for laboratory analysis. Further information will be provided when the review is complete. That was it. No clearing of his name. No declaration of guilt. No hint of which direction the evidence was pointing. 4 sentences that said everything and nothing at the same time. The analysts read it live on air. The room behind the broadcast desk went quiet for a moment. Then someone said what everyone was already thinking. He's never issued a statement like this mid-game before. The opposing manager sat in front of the microphone with the look of a man who had started something he wasn't sure he had the authority to finish. His pitcher had made the complaint. He had supported the complaint. And now, 3 hours later, he was sitting in a press room answering questions about it without knowing the outcome of the investigation. A reporter asked him directly, "Did you believe the complaint was legitimate, or was this a strategic move?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the table. Then looked up. "My pitcher saw something. He said something. That's his right under the rules. That's all I'll say tonight." Another reporter pressed, "Are you concerned about how this looks if the investigation finds nothing?" He let out a slow breath. "I'm concerned about winning baseball games. The umpires made a call. The league is reviewing it. I'm not the one who decides what happens next." He paused for a moment longer than felt comfortable. "But I'll tell you this. My pitcher doesn't make that complaint if he isn't sure. He's been in this league for 11 years. He knows what he saw." The room didn't applaud. It didn't murmur. It just sat with the weight of what had been said. Dave Roberts entered the press room with a different kind of weight on his face. Not anger. Not relief. Something more complicated than either of those. He had managed Ohtani through one of the most extraordinary individual seasons in baseball history. He had watched him hit home runs and pitch shutout innings and do things that forced people to rethink what a baseball player could be. And now he was sitting in front of a microphone answering questions about a bat in a sealed evidence bag. He straightened his back before he spoke. Shohei has done nothing wrong. I believe that completely. And I believe the evidence will show that. A reporter asked, "Were you surprised by how calmly Ohtani handled the confiscation on the field?" Roberts almost smiled. Almost. No. I wasn't surprised at all. He paused. That's who he is. He handed over the equipment because he knew there was nothing to hide. That kind of calm doesn't come from someone who is guilty. That comes from someone who has nothing to fear. Another reporter asked about the 3 hours. About what it was like in the dugout, knowing the league's best player was sitting in a corridor waiting for a laboratory analysis. Roberts was quiet for a moment. Long, he said simply. It was a long 3 hours. After the press conferences ended. After the broadcast had wrapped its final segment. After the stadium had emptied and the field crew had covered the mound. Someone went back through the broadcast footage. Frame by frame. The moment the opposing pitcher pointed at the bat. The moment the umpires gathered. The moment Ohtani handed over his gloves, one at a time, without argument. And then something else. In the 47th frame after Ohtani removed his jersey, as he walked down the tunnel and out of the camera's view, he turned once. Just briefly. He looked back at the field. Not at the umpires. Not at the officials with the evidence bag. At second base. The base he had just earned. The base that was still his, regardless of what the next 3 hours would decide. He looked at it for less than 2 seconds. Then he walked into the tunnel and disappeared. The investigation would continue. The laboratory results would come. Rob Manfred's office would issue another statement. More press conferences would be scheduled. More questions would be asked. But in that brief moment, before all of that machinery began to turn, Shohei Ohtani looked back at second base. And the camera caught it. Some things don't need a rule to explain them. Some things just need to be seen.